Alright, what I'd like to kind of show you how to set up and utilize is the additional filter that's available here within E3 right here. When you are using these checkboxes here where it's using the models attached to your terminals or cavities, sometimes you might have, for instance, if you have a gold-plated terminal, it's the exact same wire gauge and everything's the exact same as maybe a tin or nickel-plated one, and E3 gets confused on which one to pick. And then you have to manually go in there and it becomes kind of cumbersome. So I always wondered how this worked. The documentation's kind of not really clear on how to set it up, but once I figured it out, it wasn't too bad. So I created a new attribute called feature. Okay, and I'll show you how this is going to work. So I can define what features I want for a particular cavity, and it can try and match that up for what terminals you choose. So I set up this kind of Deutsch connector here in a little test environment. I'll bring you into the database. I've had this plain terminal set up here. You can see that it's got this model attached that accepts an 18 to 22 gauge wire, and it only has one wire that's kind of in the properties of the model. I have the exact same thing on this gold one here. So the only exception to this gold one here is under the properties of this thing. I've added that attribute called feature. Okay, so I just was trying a few things out. I added the text type or a text value here called gold. I made one extended pin, filter 3, filter 4, and I could add more to the bottom here if I had wanted to. I might call, I can just go back into here and grab feature again. And maybe I want to do it as a solid versus a stamped and formed. Okay. You can make those drop downs in here, so this might become, oh sorry, if I go to here, you could make it a drop down so you only have a set values to pick from, which I can show you how to do that as well. So if we wanted to do a drop down, I'll do that first. You can go into Format, Attribute List in the database editor. They will pull up this thing and you can just call this, I'll hit new, and we can call this our feature list. Okay, so you go into here and we can type in gold. We can add a new one here for extended pin, and you can add whatever you want in here. I'll just call this filter X. By hitting this read-only box, it will only allow the user to select from the list. By leaving this unchecked, they still have the option to check or select from the list, but they can also add in any ones that they want from there. So it's not forcing them to choose from the list, it's just as a guide. So I'm just going to hit OK, leaving that read-only unchecked for now. And it created that new feature list attributes. They're a list of stuff. We're going to go back into Format, and I'm going to go under Attribute Names. And you're going to want to scroll all the way down to the bottom here and kind of select a new, or start typing in a new name. I'm going to bring you back up to mine, which I've already created. So I just called mine feature. You can call this kind of whatever you want. If you wanted a terminal feature or second filter attribute, whatever name is going to make sense to you. I just left mine as a string so I can type in characters and numbers. And then the owners here are kind of when selecting the owners makes it available at different parts of the attribute. So component, you're going to want this right at the component level. So as I showed you on my gold terminal, I can add those attributes right in the main component screen. You could define it to a component pin, which is in the pin tab. For that select down drop down thing, I'll show you in the project a little bit. There's connector and connector pin, and then device pin. The device pin lives at the project level at the pin tab. So I'm going to hit OK there. The other thing is I uncheck this single instance. This allows you to have more than one feature defined, more than, feature being the attribute name. If this is checked, it will allow you to only have one feature defined for that. So you can go ahead and click OK. Then after you have, oops, I wanted to show you one other thing on here. Sorry, if we go back to attribute names, show you where to link in that list name. So if I got to go back to the F's, if I go all the way to the end, it has this list of values. You can go on here and we can now select our feature list. Okay, so hit OK. Yes, it's going to want to save that. And now if I go back to my properties here and say I want a new feature added to this thing here, now this drop down list will bring in, here's that filter X, the 3 that I had in here, and it will should let me type in whatever I want as well if I wanted to do that. So go ahead and you can hit OK. Going back to your project now, where to set this up, if you go to your settings and you go to your connection under cores and wires, you're going to want to select in here that attribute that you had just created. If it doesn't show up in the list here, that means you don't have the owners properly assigned in the database editor for that attribute. Here is where it can have the default value. Again, this is at the project level. So for instance, you want gold on absolutely every single terminal possible. You can just go ahead and grab that attribute, hit apply, and it will put it for every single time it's trying to select a terminal in there. But I'm going to go ahead, leave mine blank, and kind of demo how this is working. So right here, this is my cavity test that I had. I didn't show you, let me see if I can quick go back to it here. My connector on here. So for my pins on this whole entire connector, I'm telling it that I can either have the plain terminal or this gold terminal that I got set up in my database editor. By default, I'm just going to use the plain terminal here. Alright, so jumping back to here, you can go to the device and you can see I have some gold terminals applied and then some plain term. These first 3 cavities have wires in along with cavity 11 that's also using a plain term, and you can see I didn't force the connection to be something else. And how I applied that, you can go to the pin level here and you should be able to, if you properly define this, this is going to be at the device pin owner right here, or connect, and you can select, oh, I just select function, but you can see on here I had feature and then I can select gold. Cavity 2, I did the same thing. These other ones, in cavity 11 there is no feature defined, being a gold pin. So that's why I got, cavities 1 and 2 being gold, the other one's plain. If I were to go back into here and delete that attribute out and hit apply, you can see it changed my connector pin terminal back to being plain. You can also do this at the entire connector level. So you can go ahead and hit gold, type gold, and as long as it matches that attribute down there, it will select that terminal, assuming your wire gauge and stuff is all within that model range. This can be extremely helpful if you have, say, 2 cavities on this connector are going to an ECU that need to be gold because maybe it's a CAN bus or some low voltage. You can define those cavities as being gold. Then no matter what gauge wire you stick in there, it will always keep that gold terminal and stuff in there for you. Again, assuming you have all of your connectors set up properly. There is the same thing added in 2007 for wire seals. I haven't played with this yet as I haven't set up all my seals, but that might be something whether you wanted maybe a real or a loose, or I think they have different oil features and stuff attached to the seals, how much oil percentage is made with what. So there you go. Hopefully that kind of helps things along, helps you understand how to use this stuff, and thank you for watching.